What's going on, everybody? Welcome to week 5, the C2C CFB UD show. Here is Chris K. That's myself. I got Chris Moxley here. Ethan's boots on the ground. You know, he never told me where his boots were grounding, so I hope somewhere cool, but not able to make it this week. But we'll be putting together some content for us this week for the night slate. Mox, I see the dark mode. I see the humble brag of the profit boosts on Underdog. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm good. I listen to this show every week, so now I get to be behind the mic, and hopefully we get some winners. I don't know. I am simply filling in for Ethan, and I do have a kicker we'll talk about later. So carrying his legacy on.
You filled the role quite well. You came in good for you. I like that. We had a pretty good week last week. You know, I didn't have time to look at how Ethan's picks did. Rayola's under hit, of course, for 8.5 rushing yards because it always hit. Did you notice where that ended, by the way, where he finished with rushing yards?
Negative 40 something, right?
I think it was negative 52. They have a line out for him. They have a line out for him, and they freaking boosted it and like docked it. 4.5 rushing yards, but you get 0.86x. I mean, you can't touch that, right?
No, the value's gone. I mean, all it took was going back and looking at his high school stats, and you kind of knew that he was not a rusher. But they kept doing it. They kept putting it out there, and it hit 4 weeks in a row. The under 3 weeks in a row.
The under did, yeah. And if you did longest rush, it hit like 3 of the 4 weeks because the 1 week he did have a 12-yard carry followed by like 2 sacks, and he still hit the under. It's funny to think that his rushing prop started at like 23.5 or 25.5 week 1.
Yeah,
makes you laugh. But we do have some interesting games. I'm not touching Army Temple. I'll give that to you here in a second because that feels right up your alley. You get Miami, Virginia Tech. My Hokies play on Friday night. Rutgers and Washington. Personally, I've had success with betting Washington props this season. So, and then some Saturday games, Georgia, Bama. We can talk about, of course. But I'll kick it to you, Mox. Army Temple seems like dead on. I am Chris Moxley. This is what I live. Do you have something for us on Thursday night?
I really wish I did. I was looking at this Kanye Udo number, 16.5 rushing yards. I just think that backfield's getting a little bit healthier, and he got game scripted out last week against Rice. So I don't know that he's going to hit this. And listen, Temple is ranked 133rd against the run when we talk about explosiveness. So they are a bad rushing D. That's the only one that I would really touch in this game, though.
Is the under on Udo?
I just am afraid because I think he can get it in 5 carries. Like, I also don't want to play the over. That's the only one that I would lean over only because I think they're that bad against the run. Game script is really weird, though.
So it's interesting because if I'm thinking like Temple's bad at explosive plays, I feel like that's a quarterback in like the outside back type role. But Army doesn't do that anymore, dude. They don't do like the wishbone. They do like Udo is fully in a role that could have like outside runs and stuff, right?
Yeah, they've totally moved from
old school
Army to like they're actually throwing the ball a little bit. But you're right about the outside back. I mean, that's where Udo gets used. I just worry about the rotation now they're getting a little bit healthier in that backfield. I think Arby's really good too. So like they could rotate in 4 or 5 backs and crush Temple. I mean, the spread's 14. So
yeah, so
how much run does Udo get?
Yeah, they're 2 touchdown favorites. Do you think that it's not work? You think maybe Bryson Daly under passing yards is in play?
I think that's the way to look at it, right? Like, why throw a bunch? You're not going to show a lot this week, especially if you do wrinkles to your offense. You're a much better team than Temple is. Like, you're playing on the road, but I don't know that really matters. They're terrible. Like I said, they're 130th in EPA per rush on defense. So I don't know that they have to pass the ball. Like, I think they can. It's a pretty fair line, but I mean, would it surprise you if he threw like 3 or 4 times? Not really.
Not really. No, Temple has just looked pretty awful this year. So yeah. Let's kick it to Friday night's game. My Hokies play Cam Ward in Miami, who has looked incredible. Cam Ward just dude is automatic 300. Like, it's insane. He's just been so good this year. Whereas Kyron Drones, his passing prop is 160.5. I'm gonna be honest. I would say over, but man, how embarrassing is it that my team's quarterback, I'm not hammering an over of 160.5 yards? That's embarrassing, right?
Well, so we learned today, like at least this was new to me, that Cam Ward and Kyron Jones are cousins.
I had no idea either, and I'm the Virginia Tech fan, so
I don't know if that that matters to the handicap, but I would think that Jones wants to come out and play pretty well. The question that I have in this game is how much rain do they get in Miami? Right? Like, the storm is hitting on the Panhandle side. Does it get drenched though? Do they see like 3+ inches of rain? That's not in the forecast, but like, I'm also not a meteorologist. So that, I think that how that affects the game more than anything is if the field conditions are awful, we see a lot of falling down. I think it benefits the rushing game more. Are they really going to want these guys to drop back and pass? That's the angle that I think I like in this game, but that's game scripting based on a storm that
we don't
hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, we're not weatherologists, so don't take our word completely. The one thing I think about with Drones is like, he's got to get better eventually, right? Like, he's been so bad. And I think I was talking to Nate. I was talking to Nate about this in Slack and a couple other of us. I think it's a combination of Drones not playing well, throwing well, especially the deep ball. And I don't think the play calling has helped. Like, what happened to the second half Vandy game? Like, Drones threw for like 220 or 200 that second half. And then all of a sudden he can't break 150. He's had some deep balls to Daquan Felton and they have been dropped or just not placed correctly. But you got to think that connects. He hits the over last week if he just connects on one of the two that were missed. I like the over. My numbers like the over. But I also told myself going into Monday that I was just going to nuke his yards per attempt. But then I look and it's like 6 point. I have it at like 6.8. Like, that doesn't feel that crazy, high of a number.
It's a big spread. They're going to be playing from behind. I don't know that they're going to bring in a backup quarterback. Like, I can get on board with the passing over here. I wish we had a rushing number, because I actually think this is the week that I want to play the Drones rushing over because of the game script. But I mean, I think he's just going to be the whole offense. The problem that I've seen from Virginia Tech is they're going like east-west all the time. I'm like, you have a vertical offense. Why not utilize your playmakers downfield? And they just don't. And yeah, Daquan Felton's dropping stuff. But I think they're getting Ollie Jennings back this week, right?
Yeah, him and Tootin both practiced, like, no limitations, I don't even believe like sleeves or anything like that, like they had last week.
So that makes me feel a lot better about the passing game if we're having Jennings get back, because I don't know that the guys playing right now are good enough, especially against a Miami defense that's 8th in EPA per draft back. Like, it's a tough secondary to throw on, but 160 isn't asking a lot.
It's so low. You make a really good point about like the east-west part of the offense. Like, Jalen Lane is a quality college receiver. Like, I think everybody would take Jalen Lane on their team. He's shown to be good at Middle Tennessee State and have good-ish numbers at Virginia Tech. Like, he shouldn't be your receiver one. Ollie Jennings is great. Felton averaged like 18 or 19 yards per catch last year. The fact that Jalen Lane is the top target, to me, is exactly what you're saying. Way too east-west, way too many screens. And if I see another 3rd and 10 screen to Jalen Lane, like, I'll just turn off the game, because that's just so uncompetitive. It's so uncompetitive to just throw a screen on 3rd and 10 to a receiver. This is insane. But let's pivot from it, because other teams do play. Is there something for Miami that you like? Any of these guys?
I've been looking at this Elijah Arroyo number.
Yes.
I think he's the most interesting. He doesn't get a lot of usage, right? 1 target, 2 targets, 2 targets. How are you projecting his usage this week? Because they have a lot of options in that passing game.
You're right. There's a ton of options there. I think last week I hit his reception under of like 2.5 maybe, or I think it might have even been 3 for a minute. I think the usage isn't there. I would totally go under on the 29.5. I'll take he's got to catch 2 passes of 15 yards, and that's just not the easiest thing to do. So I like the under 29.5.
Yeah, I do. I think that's certainly the way to play it. They've struggled at time on defense, Virginia Tech. But a lot of that has been in the rushing game and the front seven more
Yep.
than it has been in the back seven. And I think they have the backers probably to cover Arroyo. So
yeah, the run defense has been the horrible part. The tackling is bad. So there might be a level of like Arroyo catches an 8-yard pass and gets a longer game, but that feels a little bit too like granular to expect.
yeah, I wish we had a reception prop. 2.5 under 2.5 would be like the play. It's just he hasn't had more than 2 targets all game or in a single game. So hard to project that type of volume.
What about Cam Ward? Any lean on the? I mean, I don't think you could ever go under on Cam Ward at 311. But is there like kind of a lean on maybe the over here?
If we think tackling is an issue, you think he hits a deep shot that's over 49.5? Like, I know that number's really high, but you're right about the tackling. If the field conditions are a little sloppy, that adds to that. Do we see them break off a long passing play? I think that's possible. You can't take under on the passing yards. I think you could take over with the assumption that they're playing for Cam Ward to get the Heisman the same way that they're playing Jackson Dart to get the Heisman. We're just putting up stats and stats and stats, and I don't know that they care. So I think Cam Ward overs are the right side. I don't know that I have a good feeling on how this game is going to play out as we get deeper into the game. Like a lot of that's going to need to come in the first half for sure, because it's not going to be a competitive game script.
I think this number is way too competitive to do anything with it. And part of the problem is kind of what you're saying, you're alluding to, right? Is like, what is Virginia Tech going to look like in the first half? Are they going to, with their lack of tackling skills and their discipline being off, like is Mark Fletcher and Damian Martinez going to break a couple 40-yard runs? Like, all it takes is for this game to be 21-0 at half, and Cam Ward's got 220 and they're shutting it down. You know, like I could just see them dominate the run game. It is funny. This 88.5 yard prop number for Restrepo is high. We're almost always going to like the under. The stuff that I create, it's almost always going to like an under on a Restrepo, you know, meaning one of 3 really talented options. And it's tough to do, but I like the under on that.
I totally understand, especially game script wise, right? And he plays a fairly low A-dot roll. So if you assume that he's not getting 10 plus catches, 10 plus targets, really, you can see the path for him to go under this number more often than not.
Definitely. Is there anybody else on Miami or Virginia Tech?
I wish we had the rushing numbers for the backs, because I do think that's I think the over on one of the backs is probably the move. I wish we had the numbers to see what that looked like, but that's something I'm paying more attention to closer to game time, because I think we're going to get value there based on the game script. But the game script has to be
over on who?
I think it's over Martinez. I really do. I think that he gets the first crack and gets most run the first half when it's competitive.
He looked good last week, so.
Well, I think I think he's better than Fletcher. That's my opinion, though.
If you kind of had to handicap it yourself, like, what do you think it'll be? And like, where would it be where you're like immediately you're going right for the over or the under? You know,
what do you think Martinez opens, like 72?
Let's see how good you are here. Shoot, I have 79.3, so that feels like that's pretty good.
That's not bad. Yeah, I mean, I think you take the over on anything under 70.
Yeah, I would take the over on anything under 70, and it's funny because if it's in the 80s, I would take the under, I think.
He's probably not getting more than 12 carries?
Probably. I mean, it's so hard to say with Fletcher. This is one of the only teams left that like it's hard to figure out usage, because they have played in like blowouts. You know, they have played in a ton of uncompetitive games, and yes, they played Florida, right? So like,
true.
You know, it's just kind of there's a little bit of risk there, I guess, but we'll see. We are a Rutgers family at Campus Canton. They play Friday night, and this is mainly just because of Kyle Monungai. We are Monungai guys. I went full lean into them, and I'm pretty happy with how the season's going so far. I've had way more success though on Washington side of things, so I'll kick it to you first, but is there a prop in this one that like jumps out to you?
How good do you think Anthony Kaliakmanis is? because I think the answer is not very good.
I was going to say I'm not all that impressed. What did he have against the Hokies last week? Because
he had a decent game.
They just schemed the shit out of it. They basically even what I heard from like the coach quotes from Virginia Tech was like basically they had one play that was working and they just schemed 3 to 4 iterations off of it. A couple big plays in the passing game where they would play action type stuff. And so I don't think he's any good, but I think his numbers last week are going to make it seem like he's better than he is.
He had 269 last week on 25 attempts, 230 the week before against Akron. This is a significant jump in competition for him, though. They're Washington's third in EPA per dropback. And I think that's largely a play of they haven't really played anybody all that great. And when they played John Mateer, he ran all over them. So I think their passing defense is probably okay. It's just a really low number again. But I expect it to be a low scoring game. Like I expect Kyle Monunga to get 30 carries. That's just what they do.
Yeah, they're gonna run it with him and Sam Brown, and then they have that other guy, Draymond or what have you. That's like a third running back that's looked good. And when Brown was out, 165 is pretty low. But if you think about it, like Washington just played Northwestern, and I don't think like Lausch is any good, but they threw for like 57 passing yards. So that gives me enough pause to just kind of resist there. I will say the Washington one that I like probably the most here is Jeremiah Hunter under 36.5. He is just seeing like no volume. 6 targets against Eastern Michigan, 2 against Washington State, 5 against Northwestern. Like he's just, to me, he's like a clear third receiver. We have him like 33.5 yards, and this is at 36.5. So we're always going to like the under on this number.
Well, I think the Rutgers back seven has been really solid this year. So like I think the Washington passing game isn't going to like take off. I think both Jonah Coleman and Kyle Monunga are the more interesting sides in this game, or players in this game.
Okay, Jonah Coleman's number is at 64.5. I have him at 80.5. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, that feels low. I mean, what do you have? 67 last week, 75 the week before, 104 against who's EMC?
Eastern Michigan. They threw like a C in there for college.
Right.
Disrespect to Eastern Michigan College.
That 64.5 feels low. I agree.
Yeah, we have him in the mid 40s usage. Like I think some of these other running backs like Muhammad look cool, but like just not there yet for stealing usage from him. So 64.5 feels, and he's looked better than I thought he would.
Me too. Oh, for sure.
I thought for sure that he would just, Nate was making him out to be look like he was like some fatso, like I was like, damn, he's added like 30 pounds, like, like looking like Caleb Jackson or Caden Fegan. And I thought he looked great in the Washington State game. And he's not doing it on a heavy volume. So if they uptick the volume, 64.5 is like soaring over.
Yeah. The Rutgers defense has not been good against the run yet. So I'm wondering, I don't know. I'm kind of wondering how much of that is who they played. And then I look at their schedule and I'm like, well, it's nobody. So is their losses on defense that they suffered, especially in the preseason, significant enough? Like what they ranked 98th in rushing yards over expectation, or rushing rate over expectation, which tells me that teams want to run on them more often than not.
Well, they lost Traore, right? Traore's like the big injury.
Yeah. So I think you can run on Rutgers, and I think Jed Fish is going to want to run on Rutgers. So I'm here for the Coleman one. That's one of my favorite Friday night plays.
So I am like, this is like the peak betting props pick'ems is waiting for like the quarterback to get benched or potentially be half healthy type thing. There's going to be some sort of shift to Damon Williams at some point, right? Like he's playing real snaps. He played in the Apple Cup, like in real important downs. He gets 5 to 8% of passing attempts. At some point, like Will Rogers under is going to be like the no sweat of the century, like Preston Stone in like week 2 or whatever that was. Like, right? Like we're getting near that territory.
I mean, lower 33.5 pass attempts. He hasn't hit that this season. They've been in competitive game scripts in 2 of them. Even in the Apple Cup, where you expected that he would have hit that. And I think, I don't know that they'll knock you for it, but I think the lower pass attempts and the higher Coleman number are obviously correlated. I don't think they're going to ding you for it, though.
I don't think they ding it on that, which I think you're right. We have him at 33.5 passing attempts, like the team 33.5 passing attempts. So
that makes sense.
If you are a fan of the under on Will Rogers, it makes sense to do it because you also have the upside of Damon Williams taking a full series instead of 2 or 3 plays, which would then drastically change the outlook of attempts or yardage, obviously.
Yeah, and he's only getting, between 2 and 5 attempts per game. I think they'll have to use him more this week. Like I said, they won week 1 by 32 points, beat Eastern Michigan by 21 points, lost to Washington State, but that was a game where he still went, Rogers still went lower than this number. And then a blowout against Northwestern where they didn't have to use him all that much. They've used him more as a rusher. But like you said, he came in the second series of the game against Washington State. Like, they want to use him early. Like, this number implies a fully operational or 100% of pass attempts for Rogers, I think.
I don't think you're dead on. I think the passing yards, it assumes he doesn't get full usage, but that attempts number screams. He hasn't even hit 33 in a full, in a game yet. That number is odd to me. So I don't know. That one's just I think that's probably the better way to do it, is attempts, not especially with Rutgers being a just run the football type. They're not going to play fast up tempo type stuff. So that game tends to lean towards a slower game.
Well, they even have enough plays to hit that number. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I find it weird that the passing yards are adjusted, because I agree. I think those are 80% of what they should be. I don't think the attempts are adjusted at all.
Yep. And I don't blame him for missing that. That doesn't feel like something you would be on top of as a UD intern. I did want to make note. You mentioned correlation not impacting rushing a running back on a receiver. One thing that I've been doing that I think is really worth keeping in mind is let's say you liked the Elijah Arroyo under on a receiving yards. If you were to bet the Cam Ward over, you get a very nice boost. I think for me, I've done it in the past with Fox, the random tight end for Texas State, and then gone over on what's his name, Jordan McLeod, and it hit and it paid out nicely. Just pick maybe a random Tootin lower or over, it doesn't matter, and you'll see.
Let's do that. Let's hit Jonah.
Yeah, so if you put in $25 as the amount, that 25 should pay 150. Now it pays 204. So keep that in mind. I think it makes a lot of sense with tight ends, because the idea is that you're picking an under on a receiver. I wouldn't do it with Restrepo, because that would just be crazy. I kind of need Restrepo to go over to get over 311, but I don't need a Arroyo to go over 29.5 to hit my number. So that's just something I thought and saw the other day and taken advantage of.
No, that's a really good point.
So
good to know for the people listening and watching.
For those mathing out there, let's talk Georgia Bama before we wrap up. What's your just early lean on just the game in general? Somebody asked me earlier what I thought, and I wasn't really sure. This is gonna be a really fun, great matchup. I'm going to be at the Oklahoma Auburn game at 3:30 Eastern, and that game starts at 7:30, and we're getting out there to make sure we get home in time. So that's one I'm excited for.
So I scroll all the way down. We're at the very bottom on this one. I actually have one I like in this game, and that's Carson Beck over 246.5 pass yards. Higher than, sorry. I don't think Alabama's secondary is very good. They're very young. They haven't really been burnt by explosive plays, but who's exactly going to burn them? TJ Finley, Byron Brown, or Braden Locke? They haven't had the opportunity, but when you watch them, you see breakdowns in coverage. I think Beck is a good enough quarterback to take advantage of that. I actually think this game could go over in general. I think you're going to see a lot of explosive plays on both sides. I'm not a big fan of Alabama secondary. And I think Georgia is going to probably try to exploit that more than they are going to try to run the ball. I think that's the answer to winning this game, because it's going to be a competitive game script, and they're missing guys still. Georgia is. So who comes back? Do they get Starks back? Do they get, their offensive line has been okay at times. Do they get Rutledge back?
I think they said he had the same thing Bowers had, that like tightrope surgery.
So yeah, the answer
he's out for 3-4 weeks. It sounds like, at least.
So I think they go with the passing game, and I think Beck can beat the secondary. That is my preferred way to attack the game, but I have a tough time figuring out what the Alabama side is going to look like more than anything.
Have you been impressed with ATN as a running back for Georgia?
He's been fine.
Yeah, he seems fine. Nothing insane.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't even this is a fine number for him too. I don't think anything about 68.5 is crazy. I think you see more like backs get involved. It's a pretty thin room in general, and they still rotate guys in.
Yeah.
So I just think the Alabama front matches up better against the Georgia front than the Alabama secondary matches up against Georgia receiving options.
So you like Beck's passing over. If you told me, hey, you pick one, and obviously I would pick the Kobe Prentice under, because Kobe Prentice is like a straight second teamer that's not going to play much. I'll pick someone different. I like the Jam Miller over 46.5 rushing yards. And I think we saw the separation in the backfield 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin that like reaffirms that. I mean, I am a Justice Haynes owner in the big 50-teamer league that goes on. So I would love for Haynes to be the guy. He had 2 carries against Wisconsin. I think maybe 4 targets. Like, he's just not a part of their game plan in terms of like playing against Georgia. They're not going to split 12 carries each. To me, this is a 16 carries for Jam, 4 to 5 carries for Haynes situation. Am I crazy, or do you have kind of the same thought process there?
I'm not sure I'm all the way there. And a lot of that is because for 2 reasons. They like using Haynes on passing downs more than they like using Jam. He's a better pass blocker. He can pick up the blitz a lot better than Jam does. I also think that game got really out of hand really quick, where they didn't need him in against Wisconsin to do really anything, especially after Van Dyke went out. Like, it was toast. Are they letting Jam get that run because he is I think he's the better between the tackles guy. I think that he is, like, if they're not going to run pass plays, there's probably not as much reason to have Haynes in for blitz pickup. I need to see like a really competitive game script to make a full determination on that, but I don't mind the Jam over because I do think he's going to get more touches. That to me is true. What percentage of those touches? I think it's still going to be like 60-40 versus like 75-25.
Yeah, I'm a little closer to 65-35 or 70-30, which is maybe a little bit risky. I will say it is the 46.5 is not a huge number, period.
No, it's not.
I think there's a little bit of like, oh, it's Georgia. You can't do anything on Georgia. But like, I don't know, Kentucky was pretty decent on the ground against Georgia, weren't they? Like, I remember some pretty decent runs by Demi Sumo on them. So I don't think you're dead in the water if he does get 11 carries. Like, I still think that Jam Miller could hit that over if that's the case. You mentioned a lot of big plays. I was shocked to see Jeremy Bernard's and Ryan Williams receiving prop numbers. Do you know what they are off the top of your head?
I pulled them up.
Okay. Were you surprised at seeing them in the low to mid 40s?
Did they take Ryan Williams down?
Well, they might have taken him down. He was up earlier at that. Bernard's at 40.5.
Yeah.
I think Ryan Williams is like 43.5 or 45.5.
I am, because I think the one thing Milroe does really well in the passing game is hit big plays.
Yeah, big time.
And I think Ryan Williams can get separation on these corners for Georgia. Like, dude's fast, dude's explosive, dude's a great route runner. Like, this is the type of game where I think he thrives. So when we get that number back up, he's probably the guy I want to target. But I'm not off Jeremy either. Like, ever since we saw him get that 1 target game week 1, like, he's played better. He's been more involved in the offense. 7 targets at USF, 4 against Wisconsin, but like, they schemed stuff up for him against Wisconsin. And they didn't need to throw late in the game. So I think he probably would have had a bigger day.
Yeah, I think people are a little bit. I think I don't know if I've ever been more wrong than like saying that freshman receivers would just not do a whole lot, because like Ryan Williams is literally incredible and Jeremiah Smith is probably better. It's like insane how good these two guys have been, and then even some other guys have been relevant. But let me ask you, Mox, hopefully you don't know this, but give me a guess. Who leads Bama in targets this season?
I don't know. You're asking me, and because it's not Ryan Williams. Maybe it is Jeremy.
They're tied at 12. Who leads with routes run? That was a trick question. Who leads in route runs? It's not a tie though here.
That's got to be Ryan Williams.
It's Jeremy Bernard, 56 to 49.
Really?
I mean, we're talking these two are the top two guys. Like the next receiver is Kendrick Law at 28, Kobe Prentice at 25 routes run. All this to say is that like if there is a large disparity between the two, I think you'd have to be, you'd be crazy not to take advantage of a Jeremy over if that disparity is pretty large. By the way, can you do me a favor and correct Felix the next time he says Jeremy?
Yes.
Thank you.
There's no E after the R.
Yeah. We've had this conversation on Burning the Red Shirt and other podcasts, I think with like Ethan on the podcast that we do. So we got to make sure that we're paying respects to Jeremy correctly. But you said you liked a field goal kicker. I'm sorry, a kicker prop. I didn't want to assume field goals.
It's not field goals. It's actually extra points.
Oh boy.
Where is this Michigan game?
We're on Zavada?
We're on Zavada higher. 2.5 extra points made.
I'm surprised by that.
I think it should be 3.5.
I think it should be 3 with like maybe a juice on the over, like a hot tamale on the over. But yeah, 2.5 feels, I don't know. I think this run game is just going to continue to get better. And Mullings has proven he's good. And the biggest part of all of it is Sharon Moore basically has said that Mullings has earned more snaps. Like he's not dumb and naive and is going to just keep hammering Donovan Edwards for heavy usage or like RB1 usage. I think he's aware that like if he wants to win, like Mullings is the guy that gives him the better opportunity. So I like the fact that he's come out and said that, because that's promising for the offense, that they're not going to just keep plugging Edwards in nonstop.
Well, yeah, and Michigan's offense has been terrible this year. Like I don't have to tell you that. They've done two things that are interesting to me, though. They're tied for 17th in the country in fourth down attempts. So they're going for it on fourth downs. They're also top 30 in third and fourth down success rate. So when they're in those positions and they're not behind the sticks, they're extending drives. Also top 30 in red zone success rate. So if they can get to the red zone, they're scoring more often than they aren't. I think Minnesota's a team that you can do that on. Minnesota's defense has looked bad this year. Lost Joe Rossi to Michigan State. Personnel just isn't what it used to be. The front seven has been beat down by a lot of, I would call average to below average. Well, they played some good teams. Let's say average rushers. I think Michigan could run for like 350 on them. I don't know that they're going to, but I think they can score a lot. Like, I don't know that this game is going to be all that competitive at the end of the day. I don't think much of this Minnesota defense, which I wasn't really able to say in the past. So I think they're going to convert a lot of these red zone trips to touchdowns, which makes me prefer the extra points to these field goal numbers.
Yeah, you make some good points. You know what they're doing is they're just running it on first and second down. Like that's why the third down success rates is pretty solid, because it's 3rd and 3. It's not 3rd and 9. Like they're getting in, they're just running it and getting to that point, right? Exactly. They had a huge fourth down an early in the game against USC where they went for it on like their own 35, 4th and 1, and they just pushed Orgy through. Like if they're not doing that, they're not taking advantage of like why they have Orgy at quarterback. So it is promising to see that. Minnesota gave up 272 against Iowa last week, 6 yards per carry. North Carolina, they gave up 3.6 yards per carry. So you get a little bit of both. I would say Michigan's way closer to Iowa in terms of run skills than it is North Carolina. And they're going to attempt it like 40 to 50 times. So I think you're right on with that.
Yeah, I think they just score a bunch of points, to be honest. I don't know that Minnesota is able to maintain competitiveness in this game. The offense is not very good. Defense is not very good. It's gonna be tough sledding.
Real quick, because we're a little bit over our typical time. We got stuff we got to do, of course. Darius Taylor, like, what's the deal? What are we doing here? Like, is he just in a midst of mini running back by committee, or is like, are they ramping him up? Like, what's the deal? 59.5 is disrespectful for Darius Taylor, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong.
I mean, 10 carries last week against Iowa. I think a lot of that was game script. Rhode Island, he came back 14, like, got a lot of passes. Nevada, he had 16 touches. I mean, you were expecting 25 though. That's what the expectation was with Darius Taylor and how PJ Fleck treats his running backs. So we're way below that right now. I kind of agree on the fact that that rush number is low. What was it?
59.5.
59.5. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you can really run on Michigan though. That's the concern that I have. Is he going to get 20 carries or 20 touches? I felt good about saying that maybe in the preseason, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I feel good about that now because Marcus Major isn't even playing that bad.
Yeah, I would say I don't see 20 carries. I think they're going to be playing from behind, and the Vegas total and the spread points in that direction as well. Woody Marks ran for 100 on him, but it was one carry that pushed him over that edge. Darius Taylor's big game, he had that like 85-yard touchdown run. Like if he didn't have that, he would have probably ended like 11 for 45. So, I don't want to like take away a run because obviously every touch matters, but like Taylor wasn't a first or second round draft pick because he had 85-yard touchdown runs in his back pocket. He was in the top 2 rounds because he was going to touch the ball 25 times. He's getting a ton of receptions and like target usage too, which is interesting. Consistently 4 or 5 targets and whatnot. But anyways, so Ethan and I typically make a couple picks, and today at 3:31 p.m. Eastern, Mox, you are now Ethan Sowers.
Okay.
I will let you have the honor of the first pick of a prop that you want to pick, a pick 'em that you want to take.
I'm gonna go with Jonah Coleman higher than 64.5. Talked about why we like that. Talked about why the game script, I think, points further that direction. You can run a little bit on Rutgers, I think, with their the injuries to their front 7. Coleman's been good, like better than advertised. So, I mean, I think this number's just a little short.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on the ground as well, and I'll do Jam Miller over 46.5 rush yards. I think that's just a little low. It's just a little low, and I think there's some upside with him if he gets the majority of the carries there.
I have one that we didn't talk about.
I'll allow it because you are a guest of honor here.
Because I'm a guest, right?
So yeah, I'll let you do it this one time.
All right, let's go to Penn State.
Oh yes, I'm all over Illinois these days.
There are a lot of ways that I want to play this Illinois passing offense. I think it's getting a little disrespected, but the number one option of all of them, just take the higher end Luke Altmaier's 177.5 passing yards. Penn State's now down their top safety, KJ Winston. I already thought you could throw a little bit on Penn State. I think this game's going to go over its total 47.5 too, because I think Penn State can play. Altmaier, that's like 30 yards short, in my opinion. So I'm all for the overs on or the hires on this Illinois offense, but Altmaier's the way I'm going.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'm not going to do it because I am not a guest of honor. I am the host here. I can't do it. It's illegal. But Zachary Franklin over 3.5 receptions, criminal. That's way too low. I mean, the guy got 3 receptions on the first drive. Pat Bryant overs are interesting. I will say I put in a small one, like a baby bet on Luke Altmaier just for fun, and then I was like, wait a second, wasn't he just absolutely garbage against Penn State last year? And do you remember that game?
Oh yeah, 9 overtimes.
Not that game. This last year did not go 9 overtimes.
Oh, that's just so ingrained in my mind that that's all I think about when I think Penn State, Illinois. No, I don't remember the game.
He was 15 of 28, 163 yards, 4 touchdowns, and was benched for John Paddock. That is a little worrisome, but he almost got there, 163 yards. He's a better player. I will say
he's a much better player this year than he was last year.
Correct. And I don't like Brett Bielema's comments about the whiteout energy. I would have preferred him not to stir up the crowd before I take overs on Illinois players.
Was this a planned whiteout?
I think so, because I think people were surprised they chose this game as the whiteout. But I'm not sure. I remember last year people being skeptical about like why they didn't do the Michigan game as the whiteout.
True.
And so I don't know which one was planned. I don't know which one was planned this year. So you're
Fair.
doing Altmaier. You're doing Altmaier. I will go. I enjoy pain. I will go Kyron Jerome's over 160.5. Yep. I'll know Friday night like how much I hate this football season pretty quickly. I need more teams, Chris. I think is what I've decided.
Listen, I'm a Rutgers, South Carolina fan, so like I don't know what to tell you.
So, alrighty. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the show. We had the Mox. Thank you so much for joining. Your appearance was just a blessed one. Good luck on your travels and enjoy your vacation. Well deserved, of course.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and so hopefully everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be here every week, Wednesday afternoons typically, to discuss Underdog Pick'em Slips. You can use C2C code to get a deposit bonus there. So make sure if you haven't joined, please do so. We also have a Home Field Apparel code. What's the promo code for Home Field Apparel, Max?
I think it's probably also C2C.
That would be good branding by Gambus again to keep that promo code the same everywhere. But hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Enjoy the weekend games. Georgia Bama should be really fun. And happy drafting.